Welcome to Face to Face, connecting theater makers to the public, a program from the Legacy Theater and socialdistancetheater.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Face to Face. My name is Tess Adams, and today I am so excited to interview an incredible singer and performer. They graduated from AMDA in New York City and went on to appear on Broadway in the Book of Mormon, as well as the national and international tours. Most recently, they were seen off Broadway in Transport Group's revival of The Unsinkable Molly Brown. They are a concert and cabaret artist who has sung at many New York venues, and in the symphonic concert Respect, a tribute to Aretha Franklin. Please welcome Coco Smith.
Hi.
Hi, Coco. How are you?
I'm great, Tess. Thank you.
How have you been holding up? We just said you're in Washington Heights, right?
Yeah, I'm in Washington Heights, and this year has been, between police brutality and the election and just the fact that a pandemic has been going on for months. It's been quite a rough year, but I'm making it through. I'm here, I am happy, and I am whole, so.
Wow, that's amazing, and that's all you can ask for right now, I guess.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get into some of your early life and career. You grew up in Cleveland.
Yes, Cleveland, Ohio.
And you actually played sports. You were very athletic growing up. What got you into theater? Did you have a significant experience that made you say, I want to do that?
I mean, crazy enough, I have always wanted to perform. I just didn't know how. I didn't know what those tools were, and nor did my mom. So yeah, I would play sports, but I mainly played sports just because my brother told me I couldn't do it. Not so much because I needed to do it. It was more so that competitive nature of, oh yeah, you think I can't do it? Oh yeah, well, let me show you. And so when I was in high school, I was a cheerleader at the time. And my high school, they just started trying to reopen their drama program. And they were doing this show, Big Bad on Trial or something like that. And I was like, I want to be Little Red Riding Hood. That's just how it is. I have to be it. I'm going to be it. And so I auditioned for it, and I was super dramatic. And then I caught the bug, and there was someone also in the show with me. I can't remember her name, which is awful, but she actually told me about this community theater on the west side of Cleveland that wasn't too far from my house. And she was like, yeah, audition, it's free. All you have to do is show up and see if you like it. Maybe they'll put you in a show. And I auditioned for Rent the Musical, and I got in. And then I've just been doing theater ever since.
And you took some time in Cleveland. You were doing community theater, how like a lot of us get our start. And you performed with Near West Theater, Cleveland Playhouse, did I see on your resume?
Yeah, I did. I did Cleveland Playhouse. I did that during a semester off from AMDA during the summer. And it was some musical about the Cleveland Browns, which is one of the worst football teams in the league. Oh my God. But I learned so much about football during that time, and I still don't care about it.
And then you got into AMDA in New York.
Yeah, that was really crazy. So I took a gap year after high school. I wanted to actually go to Kent State, but I couldn't get into school because of my dancing. And I got into AMDA just on a whim. I auditioned for them on a whim, just for funsies. And I turned down the first scholarship that they gave me. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't know anything about your school. I don't need it. I'm going to Kent State, whatever. I'm going to be a true artiste. And then I realized, maybe that school ain't so bad. Let me audition again. Got in. And the whole year after I graduated high school, I was working at my mom's daycare. And I was going to community college. And then I dropped out of community college and was pretending to go there still, all the while I was actually just going to Near West for rehearsals, pretending to be in class.
When did your parents find out about that?
They still don't know.
Now.
I told my mama.
Oh, well, that's good. So then you graduate AMDA, and then how long did it take you to get your first big gig? Which was it, Book of Mormon?
It was Book of Mormon, and I booked it 3 months later.
Wow.
I know, I was
Amazing.
pretty surprised too. Because honestly, my ego was so big at the time, I thought I should have booked it while I was in school. Yeah, but I didn't make my Broadway debut until October 27th. So during that time in October, I was supposed to join the tour, but two of the women on Broadway, they injured themselves, I think on the same night. And so they asked me, hey, do you want to come in early and help out with the Broadway cast? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, why not? Freaking out inside, so excited. Oh my God, I'm making my Broadway debut pretty soon. Yeah.
And what was that experience like, being right out of school and going straight into a Broadway show? How was the learning on the job component?
Honestly, I struggled at first because there were so many things that I was just green about, where I didn't think that I should look up who am I going to be working with and why that's important. And I emotionally wasn't fully ready. Artistically, sure. But when I got there, I was just so shell-shocked. I mean, Nikki Renee Daniels walked through the door, and I only knew of a handful of Black sopranos, and her and Audra were some of my big, some of the big people my idols that I would look up to. And she just walked through the door because she was playing Nabalungi, and my jaw just dropped, and I thought, oh God, okay, now I get it. I'm in the big leagues now. I'm here. And I wasn't ready because I was starting my career off as a swing. And that was so daunting to just have to know so many roles at one time. But
how many tracks did you have?
In total, 15.
Oh,
because I started off as a vacation swing. So I worked for 3 of Book of Mormon's companies in America at the time. So 5 on Broadway for each tour. And yeah, and surprisingly enough, each show
was the tour different than were the different companies, did they have different slightly different iterations, or was it the same?
Yes. So with each company, depending on who they cast for their original company, they wouldn't always stick with what it was done on Broadway. Like someone who was in the ensemble that usually was an alto member on Broadway would have to be a soprano in that track. So it'd just be like little things like that, but just enough to trip you up, you know.
Wow, that's incredible. And so then how did you were on Broadway and then you left for the national tour?
Yeah. I was on Broadway for about 2 weeks, and then I went to the first national tour, which was going to be closing within those 9 months. And I stayed on that tour for a full month. And that's, that's where I really learned the show, where I learned, oh God, this is how messy things can be. Not messy, oh God, that ain't the right word. It closed anyway, so it don't matter. I learned this is how messy things can be, and this is how much I have to rehearse, and this is why I have to rehearse. There was another vacation swing that started with me. His name's Randy Aaron. I love him so much. He's a dear friend of mine, and he really helped me to figure out the whole swinging thing. He was like, sister, we just have to drill these things. And so we would be rehearsing together, working on the Broadway tracks, working on the first national tour tracks in our hotel rooms from when the show closed for another 6 hours, and we would sleep for just a few hours and then have to get ready for our rehearsal the next day. Yeah.
So I've interviewed people who have swung before, and so hopefully whoever's watching this, you know what a swing is. Coco, can you go into like what you found to be the most successful way to keep track of all of that, and what is your organization system?
For me, what I had to do, I really had to mark down, I just took a lot of notes for each company. And because I worked for separate tours and, Broadway cast, I'd have to have a different section in my notebook for each company, and I would mark down not only in my notebook, but I would also mark my notes down in my script. These vocal lines happen here. This is when Kimbe moves there. And I would use the number markings that are on the stage. And I would just figure out, what line does my toe have to be on? Who am I in relation with? And you take those notes, and then you just work on one character at a time. And you really just keep rehearsing until you know how to say every single number off the top of your head. So that when they call you back in 6 months, you don't have to worry. You don't have to be that person that they have to take in rehearsal for a long time. You always want to be working and just on top of your stuff. Pay attention to your craft. Swinging is, it's a hard job, but it's so rewarding. And once you know how to do that, you become unstoppable.
Wow. So then you booked the international tour.
Yeah.
In Australia.
Oh yeah.
How did that come about? And tell me about, I mean, had you been to Australia before? Had you been out of the country?
I've never left the country, unless you count Canada. And I had went to Canada when I was a child, back when you didn't need a passport. This was my first passport, first long flight experience. And I did it on my own. It was so exciting. It was beautiful. Australia is literally like paradise. Real life just doesn't, you don't really feel like you're in real life over there. It kind of feels like the Twilight Zone a little.
I know. I think for those of us who live in one hemisphere, to go to another one, especially as remote as, I mean, it's not remote to them, but to us, it feels, it's on the other side of the world. So.
It's big remote.
Yeah. So did you have culture shock or any sort of anxiety when you were there, when you first got there?
Oh yeah. Where our first hotel was was out in the South Bank. You can Google it if you are interested in maps. I clearly love maps. Yeah, but our hotel was very close to where freeway and traffic and stuff was. And for me, it was scary because I forgot that people drive on the opposite side of the road. To be honest, I didn't even realize they did that in Australia when I got there. So I was actually kind of afraid to leave the hotel by myself because I had almost gotten hit by a car on my first day. And you just follow the traffic lines, but I'm such a New Yorker, I didn't want to.
Yeah. You were in Melbourne, and how long were you there?
Close to 1.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long trip.
Long trip, long time to be away from home. Yeah.
Did you bond very closely with the people in your company?
I did actually. Quite a few of the Americans were people that I had already worked with on the tours and on Broadway. So I didn't really know them that well, but I knew them well enough to be able to form a bond with them and to stick closely with them. I still talk with a lot of them today. We're still friends. And with the Australians, we also formed quite a bond. I still talk to some of my friends out in Australia. Yeah, I'm actually working on some music with one of my Australian roommates that I lived with for my last 3 months in Australia.
You told me before we started the interview that you were working on your first album.
Yeah.
Is that music for that?
It's not for that. It's something else that we'll put out soon. But I'm working on my first album. Thank you. I've always been a lyricist, but I didn't always have the courage to share my music. And recently discovering my true self and finally starting to love me, I've found this new courage to go after what it is that I want. And so this album is something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm doing it.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
what style of music is it?
That's gonna be all over the place because that's who I am. I'm messy, but I'm real and I'm raw, you know? So there might be a little bit of a musical theater feel to it, very jazzy, but mostly overall, it's gonna be a soul album with a little rock hit to it every now and then. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. And I know that that's a kind of a constant journey of self-discovery that we're all on, but to get to the place where you're like ready to share that and be vulnerable with the world is really an accomplishment. So
yeah, thank you.
And then most recently you were seen in The Unsinkable Molly Brown with Transport Group off Broadway.
Yeah.
That show is about a female protagonist who kind of challenges gender stereotypes for her era. And this production, correct me if I'm wrong, it was somewhat of a revival, but also had like a new book and some music that was added from Wilson's catalog that wasn't in the original.
Right. Yes.
You were actually set to perform in Sacramento Music Circus's production of Carousel this summer as Carrie Whitbridge. I'm so sorry that didn't happen. I know that we will be seeing you on many other stages in the future.
Yes.
So I want to talk about the solo show that you've created for yourself, which is like also a big accomplishment to put all of that music together and arrange and write some sort of arc for band and for story. I read a little bit about it. It's a show about honoring the female artists who have influenced your artistic journey and your self-discovery. Some of those include Audra McDonald, Judy Garland, Nancy Wilson, Kimbra, Alice Smith, and more. What inspired you to create this for yourself?
I think it really has to do with the fact that I love doing solo concerts because I use them as an open letter, a diary in such a way, if that makes sense. So when I do these cabarets, it's completely selfish, and it's to help me to get this guttural feeling of whatever it is that I'm going through in life, whatever struggle it is, whatever part of my life that I feel like, okay, I'm ready to talk about this, tell the world and leave it behind, much like how we do in therapy, I guess. So that's when I do my solo concerts, a little bit of selfishness, but I know that what it is that I have to say that other people will be able to connect to. And if I talk about things in my concerts that people don't understand, that I know that through the music and through my performances, that in their soul in some way, they'll be able to connect with me on another level, you know.
I love that. So it's creating a bridge that can be educational or,
Yes.
yeah, to people that might not share your experiences.
Oh, yes, always educational in my cabarets. If not to just talk about myself for an hour and a half, then to at least talk about those who helped me become who I am.
So you mentioned at the beginning, just like the pain and suffering of 2020. And I have been trying to address this in every interview. As we're talking about art and theater, there's an incredible intersectionality between social issues, economic issues, the crises in our world right now, and theater and art. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share with us, like, how you see the community going forward as using our art to address the hurt.
That's a really difficult question. But I suppose that our art, only because it's a difficult question, because I know that we have been using art for centuries to get points across to people and to let people know that all human life matters, all Black lives matter, you know? And it just feels like it has constantly, for centuries, been falling on deaf ears. Nothing that we are talking about these days is new. But I think because of how it can be highlighted in social media and through the media on television, that is why it's getting more of an effect out of people. So I guess when it comes to bridging the gap, a big part of me doesn't believe that it's going to be those that are old enough to understand, those that are old enough and have taken advantage of their privilege. If people aren't willing to unlearn that, if they're not making the effort, I can't continue begging them to. But what I can do is take my art and let the younger generation know that that this is not right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that they deserve to live whatever life that it is that they want, that makes them happy, that doesn't cause harm to others, that doesn't cause harm to themselves, that they're worthy of every beautiful thing on this earth, you know?
Yeah.
And that means gender freedom, sexual freedom, racial freedom. I don't even know why we need, I don't know why we are still begging for racial freedom at this point. I do not understand. I will never understand how someone can look at the color of someone's skin and think you're less than. Yeah. Especially when this country was founded on the character of a man, you know? It was supposed to be the character of a man, not the color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Period to all of that. And thank you for speaking on it. I know it's like something to put you on the spot with, and obviously no one individual has all the answers.
Yeah.
Especially because, as you said, for centuries, there has been art produced about every topic, every issue. People have written, and hopefully with the newer media exposure, we can find ways to those of us who are in administrative and leadership positions can find ways and make an effort to share that space with the stories that haven't been told.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? Let me take back what I said, actually. There is a way. There is a way to bridge the gap. And you're right, it is through art. But I'm just so angry that sometimes it's even hard for me to see. There was a time in my life where I've never been fully homophobic, but there was a time in my life where I was transphobic. And that has to do with, not that I'm trans, I'm genderqueer, but it had to do with me not being allowed to accept myself. I grew up in a very religious home where being gay is wrong. Even though I had queer people in my family, we still love and accept them at the time, but it was, you keep it hush hush, you don't talk about it. So when I joined Near West and I met my first trans person for the first time ever, I just had so many questions, only because, not that I wanted to hate him, but because I had been taught to hate him and I didn't understand why. I understood if someone wanted to be a man and dress as a woman, or be a woman and dress as a man. That's how my brain was just so small working in that form. But I didn't understand why someone would want to completely do all this work to change everything about them. But I didn't realize, being so young, I didn't realize that it had nothing to do with changing themselves to become something. It was more so going through a metamorphosis to become who you truly are deep inside, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that actually can happen with art is by putting theater in regional areas and spreading it out in more communities. Because I'm still a city kid at heart, you know? I grew up in a city, and so it's hard for me sometimes to remember the fact that people in rural areas do not have the same opportunities that I did, even though I didn't have as many opportunities as someone living out in a suburb. I think it's about our government spreading funds in proper areas so that, you know, people in rural areas, small cities, large cities, suburbs, no matter where you are in these Americas, that you are afforded the same rights as everybody else. Because art is the dictator of, like, how we get to see the world, other facets in how we see the world, other ways in which we can open our minds, and even to look back on our own history, not speaking within, I mean like in African diaspora, Hispanic, and other cultures, Native American history, on looking at different sexes, different genders, and the beauty of what makes a human, and how it has nothing to do with gender and sex and all that, but really about the heart, you know?
Yeah, and being willing to tell ugly stories.
Yeah.
From the perspective of a Caucasian person, that, you know,
Yeah.
that the history is not pretty.
Yeah.
And not shying away, not creating, continuing to create protagonists that behave as saviors.
Yeah.
Don't, the story ultimately, because of that, doesn't offer as much education or richness, and we don't get to see the complete person.
It's narcissistic to refuse to accept the ugly parts of yourself, or to highlight the ugly parts of yourself as being that which can save others when it's really causing those people pain, you know? Yeah, you hit it right on the money, all of that.
I mean, you just said, like, I really appreciate you admitting, like, your previous biases and like where you grew up. And I think Yeah, that admitting the ugly, and then, you know.
You can't move forward until you accept your past,
Mhm.
until you accept your past and you forgive it. But you have to face it first. You can't just pretend like, oh, it happened, whatever. You have to accept it and be like, yeah, we did that. It was wrong. How can we heal from it? What can we do? How can I change? How can I make it equal for everyone?
Yeah. And that taking away, it's not taking away from my opportunities
Yeah.
or my dreams to
Yeah.
share that space with someone else. Um, yeah.
I mean, it can when you add more competition.
Can, but I also, I mean, maybe other people disagree. It does, you're right, add more competition. But I guess, do you want a job that you were given because
Of the
not
color.
of
Yeah,
the color of your skin and not because you were the best person for the job?
exactly.
Like, do you
Exactly.
really want that? Because, yeah.
Yeah. And do you also
Um,
want to make your entire life a competition? Oh, we can go on and on.
yes, we can. Um, but do you have any do you have any dream roles that you would like to play one day?
My dream role truly has not been created yet. But
Love that.
it's true, it hasn't been. Um, when I look at the shows that we have, there's so much more life and story for us to tell, you know, us Black folk, us queer folk, you know. But I don't know, I heard that the Life musical is coming back, and that is one of my favorite shows. I'd love to play Queenie. Hello, Billy Porter. Daddy.
Amazing. Coco, I also wanted to ask you about any sort of sentimental moment that's happened backstage, something that's been meaningful for you.
Yes. A sentimental moment that happened, the most sentimental moment that happened for me was backstage at Molly Brown. One of the dressers just walked up to me and kindly said, "Hey, Coco, I heard that your pronouns are they, them. I was just wondering if it's she, her, they, them, or like how you want to be addressed and any other things that make you feel comfortable or uncomfortable." And I really appreciated that moment because it is important to take in consideration people's pronouns, and to make everyone feel more seen, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I also want to just completely do a 180, go go into a lighter topic of just close this with a little funny anecdote.
Yeah, right.
Do you have a funny mishap from all your years of performing?
Oh my God, I have too many to tell because let me tell you, I'm probably one of the clumsiest people that ever hit a Broadway stage. I don't know what is wrong with my 2 feet or with my brain. Lord have mercy. And I'm going to talk about something that's, you know, nice and simple. It was like, I don't know, for the people that haven't seen Book of Mormon, there is a song called Hell Dream. And it's one of the most difficult numbers for the entire cast as a whole. It's one of the few times that we come together as a whole. Anyways, I'm supposed to be this skeleton, right? I'm supposed to make it on stage with a donut in my hand for a very specific part. There has to be 4 skeletons around Price to do this thingamabob. And I did not make it on stage, honey. I never practiced. It was my first time going on for this role, and we were on tour. And the thing about going on tour, every single time you're in a new theater, obviously your quick change area is going to be in a different spot. My quick change area was so far away from the stage, honey, and I didn't tell them, "Oh, put me closer to the stage." I didn't know the right questions to ask, you know. I was just a quiet little scared thing. And so I didn't make it on time for my my little donut dance, and that will forever haunt me. But now, because it haunted me so badly, I'm one of the fastest people to put on a goddamn skeleton. It's a skin tight velvet costume. First of all, whose idea was that? I know exactly whose idea it was, and she's amazing. Let me not even come for her.
Do you have someone who helps you with that change?
Oh yeah, every person that has to get into these tight costumes, the devil costumes and the skeletons, you have a quick change person, but for the most part, you're doing it yourself.
Yeah.
You know how to dress.
You have to, like, you can't.
Yeah, but you know, it's all hands on deck for that number. It really is. There's so many quick changes that happen, so many props that are getting thrown on stage and off stage, so many bodies. It really is.
I also wanted, I think this goes with the whole theme of our interview, which I wanted to point out that Coco has on their resume a special skill of patience.
Oh,
listen.
Yeah. Yes.
One of the best things I've ever seen. So I have to throw that out there.
Great skill to put on my resume, because a lot of bullshit happens in a rehearsal room, or not even just a rehearsal room, but you know, in a show, and you have to be able to have patience to work through it. There's no point in getting pissed off about life that's happening. Here we are working in a business where we talk about life, and we decide to get frustrated with the business we chose. I don't see the point in it. So I choose patience.
Yeah, I respect that. And especially if you're lucky enough to be getting paid to do what you chose to do that's impossible, then yeah.
I charge extra for that.
Fantastic. Well, Coco, thank you so much. We are so excited to have you perform with us next year.
Yes.
And we'll see you soon. Check Coco out online.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on Face to Face. We would like to thank our sponsors, Oak Tree Development and the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and Brad Ross for the themed music. You can follow us on legacytheaterct.org.